Hi, welcome to our home. I'm Em Witt, and this is my husband, Les Witt. We moved to Rosarito about 11 years ago, and we found that the cost of living here was at least 1/3 of the cost of living of San Diego. And that's an amazing, wonderful perk because the more money you have, the more things you can do. So we live in paradise, and we have enough cash flow to travel. And a lot of that was created because we moved down here.
Hey, Jen Max, you just met Em and Les, and I am Brighton West, and I am almost retired in Mexico. This is the channel where you will find interviews and information about moving to Mexico to live your dream. So we're going to talk about their home here. We're going to talk about whether they speak Spanish. We're going to talk about numbers, costs, things like that. We'll cover all of that in this interview. But we're going to start where I like to start, which is the start of the story. So looking back just before they moved to Mexico, and what were they doing, and what was it that drew them to move down here?
About 15 years ago, when we started talking about retirement, my husband actually wanted to move to Oregon. And I grew up in Washington State, and I'd had enough of the rain and the drear. So being a kind of a beach person in California since the early 70s, that wasn't going to fly for me. So we've been coming here since 86. That first timeshare was purchased. It's a beautiful resort. And I don't know, we came 2 weeks every year since the 80s. And my idea was, how about we just live there full time? And it didn't take too much to convince him.
No, it didn't. And the thing is, we face reality. Because I came to the country as an immigrant, and so I didn't complete my 35 years working. So my Social Security would be reduced, and she also, because she was a teacher and things like that. So we could make it here much better than we would in the States, especially with real estate at that point being, I would say, almost a tenth of what it was. I'm talking 15 years ago.
Okay, so we've covered getting here. Now let's look at what here looks like, because they live in this wonderful house. So let's hear about buying this house. And then later on in the video, we're going to take a tour.
I didn't always listen to my dad, but later on in life, I grew up as he grew older, and he had always said, don't buy in town because the town will come to you. So we bought further south from Rosarito, just barely north of La Fonda, which is just a small little village, ejido, as they say. And my experience with houses had always been fixer-uppers. And so it was hard work and yes, money, but we took fixer-uppers before and turned them into absolute amazing homes. And so that was kind of the page we were on. And we had a realtor, and she brought us to this. And it was rusted rebar, some concrete blocks, and a lot of sand. And I don't know why, but I have that ability, and he trusts me. So I said, this is it. Just like in Murrieta, just like in the desert.
She said, this has potential. And this is what we got. I mean, it was great.
So we bought it. We paid $119 back in 2014. And we kind of say that with the candles and placemats, this house and the upgrades cost us about $140. And now it's about $340. And we're not going to sell it, so we don't care. And then down the road, as my dad and mom passed, I received an inheritance. And I knew how hard they worked to accrue that money. So I didn't want to just blow it. And I wish everyone had the opportunity for generational wealth, as they call it. And so since we have 2 granddaughters, we thought about how could that money really support our family in the future? Because sure, we could just go to Paris every weekend, but I thought it was more important. So we bought 2 condos. Each one cost $100,000, and now they're about $300,000. And when the time comes and our granddaughters get a little older, we'll sell them, and they will be funded for their education. And that's just what we decided to do. But I don't deny that the rental income every month helps our lifestyle.
Yeah.
So that's how we go to Paris.
And actually, speaking of those rental units, one of them is in Calafia. And I've got a video, if it's available, it's up here. It's probably available, with a real estate agent going through some of the villas there. And actually, their unit here is in the towers, but you'll be able to see the property. But let's hear a little bit more about what they do with those rental units, if they're doing Airbnb or if they're doing long-term rentals.
When we bought these properties, we say, okay, what are we going to do with them? You know, we can rent them long-term, and also we can Airbnb, it was when Airbnb was in its peak, you could get so many hundreds of dollars per night. Well, we tried it. It was a complete disaster. We didn't. The lady who was running them, she pocketed a lot of the income that should have been for us, and so we said, that's enough. So we have them both rented long term with very good tenants, and so that gives me peace of mind. The other thing is, when we had one of the houses that she inherited, was in Havasu. So we thought, let's rent this in Havasu. But you know what it is to be a landlord living in Rosarito and having to go to Havasu every 2 or 3 days because something broke? That's terrible.
Nah.
So that was discarded also.
We had been on a trip and we came home, and I don't remember, we had to drop something off at Calafia or something. And so we go, and to our knowledge, it was empty. So we just turned the key, opened the door, and walk in. And there were wet swimsuits and towels all over the furniture. There was, the usual disarray, dirty dishes, things like that. So we were surprised. And there was also a big bowl of marijuana on the table. And so as time has gone by, it's turned into a funny story. But at the time, we were just shocked. And I guess the moral of the story is, down here in Baja, pretty much on the east side of any city around the world, you got to pay attention to who you're working with. You got to have your checks and balances. You never pay somebody up front. You give them a deposit, and then when they produce, you give them the rest. But we learned our lesson early on in our 11 years here.
That's right.
And we're going to get to a lesson just for you by the end of the video. But I want to talk about healthcare, because that's something that a lot of folks are very interested in. Also, we're pretty close to the U.S. border, and that's one of the reasons people live close to the U.S. border is for access to U.S. healthcare. But let's hear what their situation is in terms of healthcare and health insurance.
We do have Medicare in the States. We're Kaiser people. And we also have used Bonanova in Rosarito many times. My husband had carpal tunnel surgery. I have congestive heart failure, but before I was diagnosed, Dr. Manor from Bonanova rode in the ambulance to this house, came in, diagnosed me, and the ambulance took me back with him, attending to me in the ambulance. Tons and tons of people use Bonanova. Also, Cruz Roja has a membership for an ambulance. It's $25 a year, and they take you to the border, where then another ambulance picks you up. It's all a process, but it's affordable and quality. When I stayed at Bonanova, excuse me, I would say that the comforters were hand-me-downs, but the sheets were clean. Everybody had their own nurse. She sat outside my door. I was there for 6 days, and finally, like maybe the third day, I just told her to come in and watch TV with me, and I learned a few words of Spanish, and we ended up laughing as two women do. But I think healthcare down here is underreported. A lot of people use the Roma doctors.
That's a very convenient thing that you can get here. Roma has a doctor. A lot of pharmacies have a little doctor on guard there for anything. You go there, she diagnoses, she prescribes you, and then you go to Roma to buy your medication. By the way, medication here is like a fourth of what it costs in the U.S. And there's no such bureaucracy and red tape that you need an antibiotic, they'll give it to you. Even though they require a prescription, everyone knows what antibiotics are. And you're always better off talking to the pharmacist than to your doctor.
Well, maybe not always, but I get your point. Pharmacists know their stuff. And so every once in a while, someone has a parasite, for example. They know which antibiotic is what you need. And not all doctors, I don't think all doctors do.
Maybe we got lucky with our pharmacist.
Yeah.
We won't change her. We're just over the border. If we needed something really urgent, just over the border there's a Kaiser facility that we could go there. But we go to ours because
I don't know.
We go to visit our daughter and stuff like that, the kids.
Most people just pay the low prices of the Roma doctors or Bonanova, and I don't know, it works.
So I know one other thing that you guys like to hear is about whether these folks speak Spanish, and also continuing on the healthcare topic, whether or not those doctors speak Spanish at the pharmacy and at the hospital. So let's hear about those topics.
Doctors in hospitals normally manage English very well, and so expats won't have a problem going there to Bonanova or to Cruz Roja or to the general hospital. Every now and then they'll get into a snag, but it's very important that, people when they interact with us and they say, hey, look, I'm trying to relocate to Rosarito. What is there? I know it's a beautiful place, blah, blah, blah. What are the things to see, restaurants? They ask a lot of questions, but there's one question that they never address. And it's, if you're coming to a different speaking country, you've got to know at least some words of Spanish. Because I tell you, a lot of expats here, they can manage their day to day. But when you get into a legal problem, or when you have to go
An emergency.
or you're doing your permanent residency, all those things require Spanish and require good knowledge of Spanish so you can check the right boxes, right? And so, well, that's what we have an advantage because I'm fluent in Spanish. And so she says, I have to go after her because if not, she won't have internet and Wi-Fi and all these things. Because I speak Spanish, I can interact with other people, get stuff done.
A lot of our friends call and ask for him to help them, and of course he does. But I took 2 classes at the Xochicalco Universidad.
There you go.
And I learned 14.
There you go.
That's one of my favorite words. I did learn some Spanish, but it was too fast. It was not the way for me personally to learn. I need, how do you say, como se dice candle? And then I relate it and it becomes part of my brain. But the rapid fire Spanish is probably never going to go into my head. He speaks Castilian because he's Argentine, and here in Mexico, it's more Mexican. I don't know if it has a name, but there's too many words that are just way different. And that's besides that the double L for him is ja, and here the double L is ya. So tortilla, and that makes me crazy.
Because there's a difference there.
I know.
One is potato, the other is just flour.
So I have, over these years, since the 80s, I learned the words I need when I order my coca sin calor con hielo con popote. I get my ice, I get my straw in a glass with Diet Coke. I'm happy. If he dies before me, which we refer to it as getting hit by a truck, learn Spanish. I'll be screwed. The TV will never work again. So many things will just never work again. I started in the past maybe 7 or 8 years when I would see the posts on Rosarito living and stuff. I'm moving to Rosarito. What's the most important thing to know? I no longer talk about all the other stuff. I say Duolingo or such today. Start it now. Because when there is an emergency, it can be really difficult. And we have FRAU, the Foreign Residents Association. I don't know what the O stands for, but they're a really cool group of people, and their whole purpose is to help us. So you can go to their office. They have monthly meetings. And when the banditos were getting pretty bad a couple of years ago, trying to pull you over on the toll road and the free road, we basically said, you need to have a meeting. They did. And it was great. There was really good information from the police chief, immigration, National Guard. It was very beneficial. And most of the things they do are something that we all need.
So FRAU is a municipal agency that kind of helps foreigners in this general area. And I kind of want to breach this topic of how foreigners are impacting the local area in both a positive and a negative way.
Well, with so many expats coming every year, when we first got here, I had understood there was about 15,000 expats. Now I'm hearing that from TJ to Ensenada, it's 60,000. That's a lot of people. One of the negative factors of that is that the housing prices have gone up, whether it's our condos that are rented or the little beach shacks that used to be $300-400. Those prices have all gone up, and that has affected the local economy. However, there's a lot of things that the expats do besides bring our retirement dollars south and buy our groceries and go to restaurants and pump our gas, the normal everyday things. I would approximate that 50% of those that retire down here, the first 6 months is all margaritas at lunch and a nap. After that, they start to kind of get that, what is my purpose in life now? I don't work anymore. I've moved to this new place. I'm settled. I've made 3 friends or 13. What now? And they start looking at whether it's legacy or just boredom. Les and I started a network for orphanages because we were quite shocked. I mean, of course, the U.S. has group homes and all of the rest. We know there's homeless people. We're aware, but we did not know that in group homes here called hogares or orphanatorios. We didn't know that they didn't go to school because of no uniforms. We didn't know the lack of food that they really had. I would say that 50% of all of the people that have moved here, and we know a lot of them, they get involved to feed the seniors. Senior citizens, they're literally, when they are no longer able to walk down the hill and get their food and water and walk back up the hill, they are left to die. It's sort of just a known sadness. So there's an organization that now brings those same seniors food every month to feed them and water. And they contribute, medicine, and they contribute to their utility bills if needed. We do the kids, Reggie does the seniors, and then in the middle, there are so many groups that take care of the animals. When we used to come here in the 80s and 90s, every time we sat down to have the taco, 3 to 6 dogs wanted your scraps. You really don't see that anymore.
Now, there's been a good movement of these organizations that spay and neuter. So cats and dogs have been now really domesticated, and you don't see that many out in the streets anymore.
And the local people, they appreciate all of this. The Boys and Girls Club has education for the families about dogs and cats, that they don't have to have 3 litters of kittens or puppies every year. I think the local people are very aware of what we bring to the table. We show respect for what they literally bring to the table. And it's very simpatico at this point, I think.
And another thing that I want to point out is that during everything happening with neighbors around us and getting the cases when migrants were flowing into the border with the U.S., and a lot of our homes hosted children and teenagers going to the U.S. I've talked to them about the U.S. is not all that they say, and some of them, especially people from Haiti, they couldn't get through, they couldn't get an interview, so they decided to settle in Mexico. So those people also are impacting the whole demographics of the area. The Haitians especially, they get whatever job you give them, and that's taking away jobs from the locals. The locals also, they're complaining now that there's new laws in Mexico that you only can work so many hours a week, it's 40. Now they work 48. So all the others that are on the border, they're scrambling to get to do this implementation. And they say that there'll be more people out in the streets because they can't afford to have so many workers. If not, the price will go up. So, it's a lot. It's very dynamic, everything that's happening here.
That's so interesting. I never thought of that aspect. There's so many folks who are complaining about undocumented workers in the United States, but there's the similar thing happening in Mexico. So very interesting. So we're going to transition to a completely different topic now, and that is this home. So we're going to get a tour of the home, but I do want to hear a little bit about what other expenses there are for running this home.
So typically, what our prices are for utilities, for example, I'm going to get monthly basis. For electricity, $25 a month. For propane, which we have here, it's about $50 a month. Water is $10 a month. And then internet, all ranges from $10 to $100. You get a range of providers. The only thing is, depending where you live, you get a service or not. Now it's a big thing going on with fiber optic, but I don't think we get it here. So we're just I'm desperately looking for a better service. The service I had that was good, they went under, and so I lost them. And I'm very sad for that.
We get frustrated over internet. Not only is he Mr. IT, but we're normal modern people. And we have our phones, like right now, where's my phone? We use Wi-Fi every minute of every day. And when it goes out, it's really annoying.
I'm gonna write to Elon Musk to see if you can get me an access to Starlink, for life.
Actually, the bills for the house are just very low.
Oh, taxes. Taxes is very important.
Oh, yeah.
The property taxes on this house is $60 a year.
We have to save up all year.
There's a fideicomiso.
Yes.
There's a trust.
Yes.
And so all our properties are in a trust because
leased land is not a good investment.
Right, and also because as a foreigner, nobody can actually buy within 50 miles of the borders. And that's the ocean, the U.S. border, the Guatemala border, or the Atlantic.
Yeah, and the fideicomiso costs about $500 a year. That's the bank trust. And I've got another video with Gordon in La Paz. He's up in this corner here, so you can check that one out to learn more about fideicomisos. But let's see the tour of the house now.
We went from sand and rusty rebar. There was a sort of a template for the original model homes, but this one was bank owned. And so we were given the budget and we were given Cal Tomic, who was awesome. He spoke no English. And at that point I knew, hola, gracias, y tengo un día, and not much more. And so we worked together really well. I changed everything about this house, being a woman and all. And he worked with me. We had no disagreements whatsoever. Originally, when you walked in the front door, the entry that we have was outside in the courtyard. And so that was just weird. And then all of the windows were small and they didn't open. And I was like, hell no, I'm a beach girl. I need the breeze. So we changed 4 windows into 4 sliders, and it's rarely hot here. We do have San Diego weather. It's a little bit cold in the winter, but that's 2 months. And it's a little bit hot in the summer, which is also 2 months. August and September are our warmer months. But I wanted, and of course Les agreed with me, I wanted a very airy, light, just movement of a house. I didn't want a lot of little rooms or too much furniture, and we wanted it to feel like the fog rolled in from the beach, obviously. That's not to say that right now we're having a big party tomorrow. It is our 4th annual Flamingo Cocktail Party, and it was born of, I saw flamingos live in the wild twice in 1 year, and I fell in love with them. I'd never seen them outside of a zoo. So I was like a little kid. And little by little, all my friends started bringing me little gifts to say, oh, this is so cute. And I agreed. So we're having the flamingo party tomorrow. So our house is pink.
What we could do?
What could we do?
If we can't get the cats, why don't we get a couple of flamingos?
Okay.
Yeah,
I would do that. Yeah. I would do baby flamingos.
And they would sleep in our bed. And
So we moved from larger houses. And so sometimes this feels in the dead of winter when it's dreary and it gets dark so early, it feels a little small. But our terrace upstairs is more than our house. So about 8 months of the year, 9 months of the year, upstairs is where we live. And eventually you'll see that. So it's 1,800 square feet, 2 bedroom, 2 baths. And we didn't know we'd have grandkids. Otherwise, we probably would have gotten a bigger house. But we manage, and everything's just easy and simple, and it works. That's another thing people always think, that in Mexico, you have leaky roofs, and that can be a challenge. But in general, you can have U.S. construction down here. And I had a dad, and I knew measure twice, cut once. So we managed with Caltomic. We had one issue at all, and that's when I came in one day to check on the progress, and the fireplace was red brick, and our cupola is orange brick. And any single person, especially women, listening to this, you can't have orange brick and red brick.
Right, no.
So we compromised and split the cost of gray slate, and it worked out just fine.
So I hope you agree this is a gorgeous house and the view is beautiful. It's a little bit socked in right now because it's the morning, and this marine layer will burn off more in the afternoon. But before we wrap up this video, I want to get a tip. We already had the tip of learning Spanish, but so we're going to get tip number 2 from these guys, or tip 2 and 3.
So my second tip would be, make sure you join in. You might not be that into Facebook, but Facebook here in Rosarito posts on multiple pages everything that's happening, all events, all festivals, new restaurants, bad restaurants, what's happening with the police and the National Guard. Get involved, make friends, acquaintances, and learn where you moved to and what it's all about. There are little things around this whole area that are spectacular to just go on a day trip, but you won't find out any of them if you don't get involved. That's my tip. What's yours?
Also, because you're moving to a country that's not yours, and they're allowing you to come into the country and live there, you should show respect for their traditions and their culture. Don't ever try to change their culture, because then you don't belong here.
And learn how to say, have a nice day. Que tenga buen día. We say it in the US to every clerk, every guy who checked your tires, everyone. We have that sensibility as humans where we say, hey, how are you? Have a nice day. Don't be any different down here. When we go through the toll booths and I say that, they look at me, this white woman with blue eyes and blonde hair, and they appreciate that I tried. And I believe that. I see it all the time. They get a little smile on their face and they get that I might not know very much, but I'm trying.
Another thing that's kind of funny, a lot of Americans come here and think that they own the place. Well, they don't. And when they come here and they go buy stuff, they want to barter, and they do make some ridiculous offers. Well, don't do that. The guys here work hard for much less than what you get in the States. So respect them and pay them the right price. That way, you'll avoid prices going up and things others. And the other thing is, if you go and buy stuff and they see you coming, look at that and look at that, the price goes up immediately.
Sometimes.
But, being white and things like that, they know where the money comes from. And so they always try to get a little advantage.
But the most important part is that we work together.
Yeah.
That we live together. We literally live together. In just our community, there isn't that many full-time people. We are full-time. But the part-time people, half of them, or more than half, are from Mexicali, Tecate, and they bought their beach house here. And so, we live together. We need to work and live together.
So yes, that is great advice. And when you go into a shop and the shopkeeper, as you're leaving, says buen dia, that is que tenga un buen dia. So that's the shortened version of that. So I had to ask my Spanish teacher that one because I was like, why are they saying, essentially buenos dias is typically when you walk in, but buen dia when you walk out. So, and that applies across the day too. It's not like buenas tardes. Buen dia is kind of universal for the day. So there's your quick Spanish lesson for the day. But I've got additional videos for you, other interviews up here. And what else down here is something that YouTube thinks is perfect just for you. So from Rosarito, I wish you were here. Hasta luego.